browser-based threats has been an issue for a while. It's a very large attack surface if you start looking at it from a digital working perspective. On an average, any large bank has roughly around 150,000 employees. And talk about securing 150,000 endpoints in terms of browser. So I think the initial thought process, which is how the industry went with browsers, by the way, is let's look at privileged users because they are the most at the risk. That has changed because now we know the cyber criminals, they don't discriminate. I'm sure you've seen the recent incident at JLR in the UK. You've seen the recent attack on airports in Europe. And the message is clear. Just securing your enterprise is not enough. You really need to handhold and help everyone around you, because if they get exposed, you get exposed too. And I don't know how many more attacks need to happen for that reality to sink in. If you manage your reaction, you'll manage your life very well. Your reaction determines how things go. So I think work hard on how you react to situations. And that's what, particularly at a senior leadership level, it all comes down to how you react to situations, because there will be situations, but how will you react, recalibrate, and respond to the situations actually differentiate you as a leader compared to probably most of the population.
Hi Sandip, welcome to Be Fearless podcast. Such a pleasure to have you here with us.
Good morning, Sasha. Nice to meet you. Hello from Jordan.
Hello. I know that you're traveling quite a bit right now, going to different conferences and sharing your opinion. So I'm super excited what we're about to talk about here today. I'd love to introduce you to our listeners, where you're coming from and your background a little bit. So today, managing cyber risk in banks goes far beyond defending stakeholders. It involves a deep understanding of how technology reshapes the threat landscape. And today's guest is an expert. Sandip Wadje oversees emerging technology risk at BNP Paribas as a managing director. With more than 20 years of experience in this field, I'm super excited to learn how he helps enterprises stay ahead of tomorrow's threats. Sandip, you've had quite a journey from trainee engineer to global head at one of the world's largest banks. Maybe share a little bit more about your journey and what drew you to the challenge of security and risk management.
Thank you. It has been a journey for sure, because I did my engineering in electronics and telecommunication, worked at a TV factory, and then flipped to kind of a network telecommunications career, and then again flipped to cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a very large area. It can go from identity management, data protection to security operations. So I was fortunate enough to kind of navigate it in different, I would say, lenses. So I've done a lot of work on identity and access management, also on security operations, and now I'm focused on emerging tech, which is itself quite a niche area in terms of the different focus that I have. In my current role, I am focused on cloud, AI, digital assets, and threat intelligence, which gives me some unique perspective as to what's going on in the industry.
You're covering quite a bit, and emerging tech is such a interesting area for anyone that is looking either to enter in this field or just looking at it from outside world, because everyone is trying to implement new technology as much as they can. What are some challenges that you typically encounter on everyday basis, and what exactly some of the risks that you see in emerging tech?
So let's unpack a little bit on emerging tech. When you say emerging tech, it's essentially a new piece of technology for which not just the bank, many times industry as a whole has not documented controls. And you see what's going on in artificial intelligence. The genie came out of the bottle, and then everyone is like, oh, how do we deal with access controls? How do we deal with data protection? How do we address explainability? So this is afterthought. When we say emerging technologies, where you have a piece of technology, artificial intelligence, quantum, digital assets, blockchain technology, where the technology is coming first, and then you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I first build like a shared view of what those risks are? because that is the first challenge. Just Sandeep having his perspective on risk doesn't work. My
Hmm.
boss needs to have the same perspective. The regulator needs to have the same perspective. So I think having that shared perspective of what those risk means is equally important. Then I think the first challenge in emerging tech is, I would say, is the executive education part, because and AI is a good example. AI means many things to many people, very subjective as well. So when the subjectivity comes in picture, people can be emotional, because you may have very different perspective on AI. You're like, oh, my family should not have access to Chat GPT because the critical thinking is going down, or someone will say, hey, Chat GPT increases productivity, we should encourage it. So you have to find a balance. So first thing is with emerging tech is having a right level of understanding what adoption of that technology means from an executive perspective. And then there is the risk part, and the risk could be essentially blockchain is a good example. Blockchain by design is a technology which is a distributed ledger technology, which means many parties have to come together to run the technology. One party cannot run it. Then there is a shared infrastructure, there is APIs, and then it's a larger attack surface. So and then again, in a shared infrastructure, you cannot get a resiliency because you're not the only one controlling all the nodes, right? There are
Hmm.
other parties running their nodes. So resiliency is also an important question. So these are like some of the examples of emerging technology and emerging risks. And then you have to work backwards saying, okay, how do we address this, both from a security and resilience perspective?
Yeah, it really looks like in your role you have to think how do you enable people, but at the same time in a cautious and structured way. I wonder what is sort of the latest challenge that you successfully overcome that is very relevant for today's world.
Definitely, I would say, I'm jumping into the same area the whole world is going on right now.
Mm,
It's AI,
mhm,
and I would not say I have overcome it, but at least made some good effort in that direction.
mhm,
If you look at artificial intelligence, security for AI and AI for security both go hand in hand. And you
mhm,
really need to kind of cover both the dimensions. You can't just do one. You can't put all energy on securing AI and then don't understand how adoption of AI technology is going to change the business. And I give some layman examples. You implement AI in financial services. You're looking at industrialization of credit risk process. You're looking at industrialization of customer journeys across different business verticals, and then that changes the security risks as well. So I think one of the challenges that I have observed, and I'm still making every effort, today, is for not just the stakeholders in the bank, but industry as a whole, to have like a very nice 360 view of what the adoption of AI means
mhm.
for all of us, both securing AI and also using AI to defend ourselves, and then keeping at pace with business adoption of AI. I think that is probably is one of the most overlooked topics, is because defenders are so busy trying to deal with operational issues and threats. I don't think people have had time to kind of take their head out and say, hey, okay, where will be business in 3 years time with whatever they are doing with AI, and what does that mean to secure that new attack surface or new type of emerging threats. So it's a very interesting trajectory. I would say I've made an effort. Overcome is a big word.
Mm.
So yes.
Yeah, yeah. But do you think, generally speaking, are the banks slowly approaching that part where AI is getting more regulated, or we are far from it?
So the way I would describe, particularly with technology, and I'll give general examples, and before I go to answer your question,
Hmm.
we had social media, and then all of a sudden we started saying, ooh, this needs to be regulated. Somebody needs to do something about it. There are dangers of social media,
Hmm.
and things change when regulators step in, particularly with technology. There is so much you can do in terms of educating stakeholders, advising what best security or practices can be. But I think there is a role to be played by the regulatory side as well, because unless regulators say something, and this is a human thing, if you go on a road, there is no speed limit sign, there are no signals,
Mm.
you'll probably drive at whatever speed you want to drive, right? That's human
Yeah.
behavior. So I think that speed breaker is very important, and it does play its part. But I would say, particularly financial services, given how regulated we are, I think on AI, a lot of work has happened. And if you look at different working groups in the industry today on AI risk and controls, I think the shared knowledge on how to address the risk associated with AI adoption, I think the industry as a whole has done a lot. Particularly, I participate with European Financial Roundtable. So we produced a AI risk and controls white paper, which is out there for anyone who wants to download it. FSI Tech has done a great job with putting spotlight on different aspects of AI security and risks. So I think we are getting there, but again, it's a lot to cover, and particularly with AI, I give Copilot as an example. When everyone started rolling out Microsoft Copilot, they already have access control and data protection measures in their respective institutions.
Mhm.
What did Copilot do? And I call it like a 10x mirror. So we already knew the fault lines in our access controls. We already knew that data classification was not perfect. And
Mhm.
then a co-pilot steps in as a 10x mirror, and it shows you all the cracks in your face, and you're not beautiful anymore. So and the reality is, we already knew that access control was not perfect, data security
Mhm.
was not perfect, and co-pilot just amplified it. Where I'm going with it is, what are we trying to do now? We have to go sit down with business to fix access control, fix data security, and that is like a very unique, I would say it's a huge cultural shift from a security perspective, because defenders are usually very busy defending, running security operations, vulnerability management, maybe to an extent like governance, risk, and compliance. But ask defenders to spend a lot of time with compliance, legal, risk, data protection officers, and it's a whole new territory for them, because all of a sudden now you have to take all the key stakeholders, including business, on board
Mhm.
before you actually can go ahead with rolling out more and more, whether it is Copilot or any other AI tool. So I think it's a lot of changes, particularly from a defender's perspective, because all of a sudden they are exposed to collaborate with a lot more stakeholders, which they have not done in the past.
I just wonder how, throughout this whole process, how do you ensure that whenever you communicate the importance of regulation, people don't feel like you constantly pushing on brakes and actually being helpful to them in the long term? Like, is there a way that you go about doing it?
You're specifically pointing to the regulatory controls.
Yeah.
So you have to have like a balance. The interpretations of what a regulator says vary actually. At the outset, a regulator may come and say, "Hey, this is how I want explainability. This is
Mm.
how I want fairness associated with AI." Or we can talk about general security controls. The regulator may set certain boundaries on how personal data should be handled, or personal data should be protected. But the actual implementation is with us. And this is where I think it becomes very interesting, because when you have different stakeholders with different hats and different priorities on their head,
Mm.
their interpretation of technology or the regulation can be very different. Because if
Mm.
you go to a legal person and say, "Hey, what do you think about GDPR?" Their view of what you should do to ensure compliance with GDPR will be way different than if you sit down with someone with CIO's office, someone with CISO's office. And
Mm.
then I think the biggest challenge in regulatory compliance is finding that balance. Make every effort to at least have some understanding, common understanding of what that regulation means in terms of implementation of IT controls. Otherwise, what I've seen is the interpretations vary, when actually the regulator is in your kitchen. Completely different kind of truth is unraveled. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very long process, and in a way, you have to have this constant translator that is able to tell, okay, this is what regulators want, and this is what the other side wants. There always needs to be someone that helps with this part. Sandeep, I also wanted to talk a little bit more around threats. We just talked about AI being great enabler, but also it has certain threats attached to it. And financial services employees now conduct nearly all their work through web browsers. How are banks today addressing this gigantic attack surface?
I think the browser-based threats has been an issue for a while. Whether it is then phishing campaigns, whether it is man-in-the-middle attack, session hijacking, and it's a very large attack surface if you start looking at it from a digital working perspective. On an average, any large bank has roughly around 150,000 employees, and talk about securing 150,000 endpoints in terms of browser. So I think the initial thought process, which is how the industry went with browsers, by the way, is, oh, okay, let's look at privileged users because they are the most at the risk of phishing attacks or watering hole attacks, etc. That has changed because now we know the cyber criminals, they don't discriminate. Everyone is their favorite. They don't say that, hey, you're a privileged user, you're my favorite. They are just looking for one foot in the door, because one of the things which is, I would say, known secret in the industry is once you set foot in the door, well, the kitchen is like, unrestricted access. You can go anywhere you want. And we have done a lot of effort in terms of segmentation and enforcing controls. But anyone who has ever done red teaming or pen tests on the internal infrastructure would know that even today, for most of the organizations, once and this is where you see attacks after attack, the modus operandi is simple. You got foot in the door, then you elevate the privileges, you go around, and then you get access to crown jewels, and then you see the big headlines coming out in terms of data breach or ransomware attack, etc. So it's a huge attack surface to secure, and cyber criminals know that. And browsers is an area where it is continuously evolving. So, and it's very difficult to keep in touch in terms of the new threat vectors. So it's an interesting area. I think the initial focus has been on securing privileged users, then probably extending it to the entire workforce. But I haven't seen very few institutions extending it to the entire workforce. And that's a challenge. It should be the case, but that is not the case.
Yeah, I think you sort of also answered my next question, but I still want to ask this.
Sure, sure.
Do you think, is there any particular browser-based threat? Like, I know that we spoke about privileged users and normal common users, but is there any particular browser-based threat that genuinely concerns you that most organizations aren't prepared for?
I'll in general reference to browsers and plugins. Look at the fact now that we have AI browser, and what's going to happen is we're going to have more and more plugins. This is where I think it's not just the browser, it's the supply chain associated with browser, and the cyber criminal just has to pick up one to get to across like the entire large set of attack surface. Not just one organization, by the way. It can be multiple organizations, because you have a AI browser, and that has one plugin, and the same plugin is used by what, hundreds of thousands of employees in 10, 20 organizations. They just found like a really nice way to get in and launch the campaigns. So I would say the fast evolving pace as to how browsers are evolving, and particularly now with AI browsers and plugins in the browsers, I think it's just one step wrong, and you're in the headlines. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that your role also covers threat intelligence. How has the sophistication of browser-based attacks evolved in just the few years that you've seen?
I'll answer this question differently. One of the things that I have noted we don't do in the industry, which is very unique, if you look at healthcare across the world, they will do clinical research, clinical trials, and they'll list down whatever that went wrong. And you will have a very clear, essentially, telemetry of incidents and indicators and etc etc. Particularly and unfortunately in cybersecurity, the basis for cybersecurity threat keeps evolving based on who has got the most ability to make noise around a threat. And where I'm going with this is, we do not have an accurate view of, hey, these are the percentage of threats that actually originated in the, and browsers is very simple. Everyone uses browsers. So I'll not be surprised that a lot of threats actually originate from the browser. but that
mm,
traceability is not maintained.
mm,
So what you have is symptoms, and then
mm,
you see this ransomware attack unfolding somewhere, and every attention is actually on that server, the place where that attack happened, not where it originated. And I think that
mm,
traceability is important, and without that, I think it's very difficult to pinpoint how many percentage of attacks originated from a particular threat vector, whether it is browser, whether it is then some employee action. But I would assume there are quite a lot of novel techniques that are associated with browser-based attacks. And again, I haven't spent a lot of time on browser-based security.
mm,
I'll be transparent about it. But where I'm going with it is when a cyber criminal gets foot in the door and there is an explosion,
mhm.
the focus is on this, uh,
The last touch point or
the
something like
loss and
this.
the impact, and the focus is not
Hmm.
on how did the attacker got in first place.
Yeah.
I wish we started looking that way as well, as a part of root
Mm,
cause analysis. And then we'll have a very nice telemetry as to, hey, where exactly that initial access happens, and how do we then close those loopholes, instead of something that we already know, that access control is broken internally, the data security is not perfect as we may want to be perfect. So I think there has to be that balance, but the telemetry is not there, I would say, from industry perspective.
yeah. Hopefully, in the near future, we'll see more treatments for the root cause and not only the symptoms. Um,
And share it.
mm,
Again, you look at healthcare, aviation, they share this telemetry. For some reason, we are not sharing health and hygiene data as we should when it comes to technology as a topic. Maybe also because it is considered as a competitive advantage, and that is the
mm,
reason probably a lot of people don't want to share how they secured their systems. I think, but it's quite clear. I'm sure you've seen the recent incident at JLR in the UK. You've seen
mm,
the recent attack on the airports in Europe,
mm,
and the message is clear. Just securing your enterprise is not enough. You really need to handhold and help everyone around you, because if they get exposed, you get exposed too. And I don't know how many more attacks need to happen for that reality to sink in, that we
mm,
really need to work with the entire supply chain and work
mm,
collectively to secure that supply chain. Because when the airport check-in goes wrong across four busiest airports in Europe, everyone is affected. I think as an industry we'll get there, but still more needs to be done, particularly I would say on the root cause analysis and lessons learned
mhm.
from incidents. We are still not sharing that openly.
Yeah, it's a very connected world, and it's impossible to expect to be untouchable if everyone you're connected with at the end of the day is under a certain threat. So I really like that, explanation analogy you just shared. I wanted to also ask you more around leadership questions. I know that you've built cross-continental teams. What's your secret to building successful, productive teams as you grow along your career?
There are a couple of things. It's very important to have diversity in your team, particularly in cybersecurity. I had an opportunity to hire a graduate straight out of King's College, no cybersecurity background,
Mhm,
and she ended up being the best security analyst in my team, because I explain it in a different way, and this is quite like ancient wisdom. Is
mhm,
sometimes to learn something new, you have to unlearn as well,
mhm,
and put yourself in my shoes. I was electronics engineer. I went to telecommunications. I've done hands-on technology implementation, but then I
mhm,
learned a lot. And if there is a new threat and something new has changed, I'm not going to unlearn. It's a tough job after 20 years to unlearn.
mhm,
So when you bring someone with a diverse background, and you will find that they have a completely new outlook to solve problems that you never thought about.
mhm,
And that's the way I think it really helps in cybersecurity. Get people from different cultural background, have that diversity in the team. And I'm also referring to specifically lack of female leadership in cybersecurity. You go to
mhm,
conferences, and you will find half of the time it's fully kind of dominated by the male audience. There are not enough women in cybersecurity. That needs to be fixed. It really helps because the different cultures and different voices actually help us all get better in terms of how
Mm,
we look at cybersecurity. So I think
mm,
one is building that diverse team. Second is empowering the team, which means, and it's a tough thing to do. I have to manage my boss, maybe his boss, the stakeholders, and,
mm,
and then it is human to say, hey, you just get the stuff done. But you have to empower them. So
mhm,
empowerment means you have to make every effort to make sure that the top down communication is visible to your team, because
mm,
if there is no top down communication, the team will not feel the goal or the vision the company is going towards. So
mm,
and if you're not part of a story, you don't feel motivated, right?
mhm,
So if you make them feel that they're part of a story, then they're more motivated to walk that journey, make that extra, take extra steps to achieve certain goals. So I'll
mm,
say top down communication is key. Having diversity in the team is key, and then making every effort to skill and reskill them, because cybersecurity is a huge area, and
mm,
you can't expect everyone to know everything. So you have to make sure that you invest in your people. AI is a good example. It's a new area, so you can't expect someone to know everything about model risk. So you
mhm,
need to make sure that they are trained on that topic. So training and development is also a key. You can't just assume that someone is going to read stuff off internet and help you in addressing certain risks. So that
mhm,
really kind of plays an important role.
mm. It's so at the end of the day, it's the diversity, the top-down communication, and constantly learning and adapting your skill sets. These are the good key three
Yes,
things to
yes,
look into people, and I couldn't agree more because as attackers, as you said, don't really discriminate when it comes to privileged users or not privileged users. Likewise, on the cyber defense side, we should have diversity of who is defending against those, because there should be no discrimination on either side.
exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And looking at your unique experience from consulting to industry leadership, what security practice that worked 5 years ago is now completely obsolete in modern banking?
Actually, this question made me think. I'll answer it differently. I wish there was one, by the way.
Mm,
And I'll tell you. I'll give you a layman example.
mhm,
Imagine you went to a shopping mall for
mhm,
shopping a couple of years back, and they did not have the scanning or metal detector technology,
mm,
and the security personnel at the entrance would inspect your bag and let you in, just to make sure there are no explosive guns, whatever. And now, 3 years down the line, there is a metal detector scanner,
mhm,
and you have this person who has been trained to open the bag is still opening the bag on top of scanning it using the metal detector. So what do you have from a
mm,
cybersecurity perspective is, I wish we got rid of controls that are not necessary to perform. But as an industry, what we do, and from a security and you will find that everywhere, right? You're like, there is a scanner there. Why do you need to
mm,
open my bag? And I wish that if industry got rid of controls that don't need to perform. But particularly
mm,
with security, what happens is it just stacks on top of each other. So we are
mhm,
still performing controls that probably are not necessary.
mhm,
A good example is, we talked about browser-based, security. If you have a browser-based security controls, it makes a lot of controls obsolete.
mhm,
You really don't need to then probably worry about AI-based DLP issues, because
mhm,
you've got a browser layer, and then
mhm,
everything that's go through to like AI system, AI application, you can control it. But
mhm,
what we do is, you're adding something to secure your browsers, but then you're
mhm,
not saying how does the underlying controls change. Can I remove some controls? So what you
mhm,
have then is controls fatigue, because we have
mhm,
been adding more and more systems to monitor our health and hygiene, And what is
Mhm.
happening is the systems to monitor the health and hygiene are more than actually an end user's ability to go and imagine I'm a business user and I'm going around with all these health and hygiene indicators around me. I'll be like, I got to get a job done. So can you just make sure that there is very coordinated efforts when it comes to performing controls and control testing. So I wish I can remember one practice that has become obsolete. What I've noted actually is it has stayed and it just has been stacked on top of each other. So it's a very
Mhm.
interesting question, and it made me think that how many controls have we removed as a result of
Mhm.
new security tools implementation? So that's a
Mhm.
very, very interesting, area to explore actually.
Yeah. I think perhaps after a certain period of time, some things are getting removed, but there is a certain stickiness and resistance that is present as a new tech comes in. There's probably this wait time of how long should we wait until we 100% sure that this area completely can resolve the area that the previous technology was able to cover.
Yeah, it is. It is also to, and there is very nice terminologies in the banking world. Run the bank and change the bank.
Hmm. What does it mean?
Yeah, run the bank means something which is business as usual,
Mhm.
and then you're managing access, you're doing access certification, you're detecting vulnerabilities, you're detecting security threats, etc. And then change the bank means, hey, AI just came in, quantum just came in, and we don't know what the controls are. Since the controls have not been written, we don't know how to monitor them. And I think we are getting at that inflection point now. Is what we have done traditionally is we have put one defender in charge of run the bank and change the bank.
Mhm.
And I think I'm coming to a conclusion that it is not sustainable. I think
Mhm.
it needs two personas, and then there needs to be a handover. Like, hey, you go fight the battles you need to fight, and until
Mhm.
the time I figure out this brave new world, how to secure it, what needs to be done, and then at some point in time I'll hand over to you, and then you go and do the job of protecting
Mhm.
the institution or defending the institution, because it is evolving very fast. Because the legacy IT, it has had whatever 15, 20, 30 years of lifespan in terms of how it has evolved. But I think with
Mhm.
AI and everything that's coming through, it's changing so fast. I think the industry as a whole, we need to start asking ourselves: do we really need two personas when
Mhm.
it comes to run the bank and change the bank?
That is a good question to ask, and hopefully we find out the answer soon.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And also, I know that you do a lot of mentoring work. If you were mentoring someone who just about to start their first leadership role, what's the hardest truth you have to tell them about your field?
It is not as glorified as it looks. And
Mm.
then, particularly in cybersecurity, I don't have to say anything. Some of the
Mm.
biggest brands in the world have been hacked, and you're a
Mm.
graduate and you're full of energy, enthusiasm. I'm going to work in a Fortune 500 company,
Mm.
and everything should be in place there, right? And
Mm.
then you go in and then you realize it's people. Most of the times people are not perfect, and
Mm.
there is a legacy, there is a history. So, and particularly in IT, there is always history. If you're a graduate trying to get onto a journey into cybersecurity, increase your appetite as to how surprised you will get when you land there, because it's not as glorified as it feels. There is a lot of learning curve, and don't underestimate the amount of effort, particularly in the first 3 to 4 years, in terms of
Mm.
building relationships if you're joining a very large company. Because in large organizations, you have to navigate and find the right people and get things done, and it could overwhelm if you're new to this whole thing.
Mhm.
It will save you a lot of time if you prepare yourself on two aspects. One is it is not as shiny as it looks. There is going to
Mhm.
be a lot of hard work, and then particularly you will have to navigate and make a lot of friends to get things done
Mm.
in a very large organization.
And if that exact person also asked you, as I grow along my career and want to build influence, what's one skill should I have that has nothing to do with technology?
I think It's communication, communication, and communication. It
Mm.
all boils down to communication. And I've covered this in the podcast today. Different stakeholders have different interpretations of what technology means to them.
Mhm.
So it all boils down to your soft skills. And with soft skills, there are a lot of things like, come into picture. And one quote that has stayed with me for a long time in my career is, what you often perceive resistance is lack of clarity.
Mm.
So you think that person has agenda against me. Oh, that person doesn't want to cooperate with me. Most
Mm.
likely, that person is not able to understand what you're trying to explain.
Mm.
So it is something to do with your communication to get that
Mm.
person on your side. I would say invest in soft skills in terms of how do we effectively communicate your
Mm.
understanding of the topic, or how do you effectively communicate, hey, I know this about AI, I don't know this XYZ part about AI, and then be transparent. And that will
Mhm.
help you a lot in terms of building relationships as you go along. So
Mm.
technology is just one part of the play. Technology will change.
Mhm.
You had legacy technology yesterday, now you have AI, tomorrow there will be quantum. But it's the people you need to deal with. It's the people you need to explain what that technology means in terms of their
Mhm.
day-to-day jobs. And then it all comes down to the soft skills part. And I would say communicating effectively is very, very important.
And this is something that is evergreen. And how did you approach communication throughout your career? Is it something that you took courses in, or is it just you think gradually developed?
This is a, this is a good question. The short answer is, I learned hard way. The long answer is, if you were born in a particular part of the world and then you go to a different culture,
Mhm.
and then you're trying to kind of recalibrate as you get along. And I think the couple of lessons I've learned, and it's very hard to do. And that's why I said, you learn with experience. You can try to shortcut it. One is not to take things personally.
Mm.
And I can go on telling you, managing people and dealing with people, a lot of people don't take feedback positively. and
Mm.
and taking feedback positively and acting on it is the greatest thing that you'll ever do to yourself as you go along. And maybe you are in India today, maybe you are in US tomorrow, maybe you work
Mm.
for an oil and gas company today, you work for a bank tomorrow. What will happen is, will essentially strengthen you, harden you a bit, because you now essentially trained yourself to look at things objectively, take feedback
Mhm.
positively, and then work back on improving that feedback. And close that loop is to communicate effectively. But a lot of these things you learn with experience. But I would say, take feedback positively, act on it. And another lesson I would say, from a career perspective, and this is again ancient wisdom, life is everything how you react to it.
Mhm.
If you manage your reaction, you'll manage your life very well. So because it's a reaction, right? So
Mm.
I'm at the airport, and for no reason someone stops me to ask me something. I have a choice. I can react saying, hey, who are you? Why are you stopping me? I have to go catch a flight. Or you can be say, hey, how is it going? How's your day? And you
Mm.
change the outcome. Maybe that person is just doing their job, or maybe that person has whatever. But your reaction determines how things go. So I think work hard on how you react to situations. And then that's what, particularly at a senior leadership level, it all comes down to how you react to situations, because there will be situations, but how will you react, recalibrate, and respond to the situations actually
Mm.
differentiate you as a leader, compared to probably most of the population.
Mm. I honestly, as you were speaking all of this, it made me feel so much calmer. um, so it also, I'm sure it's going to resonate with a lot of people that are listening, and especially who are trying to grow from junior level to mid level, from mid level to leadership, because these are the very important transition periods in time where you have to further enhance your communication skills and be more receptive to whatever people are saying. We also have this tradition in our podcast, Sandip, where typically our previous guest would ask a question to the next guest. So, our previous guest asked, what steps do you take to help your non technical colleagues strengthen their technical skills so they can help to do better security within your organization?
Well, the question sounds simple, but imagine you have a person who is responsible for identity management,
Mm-hmm.
and we have limited resources in cybersecurity. And tomorrow, the same person has to go and, hey, can you just go and do these cloud security controls? We need to do something about cloud security posture management. Go figure it out. It's not just the training part, it's the storytelling part as well, is because people are people. Someone
Mm-hmm.
was hired to do identity management, someone was hired to do vulnerability management, and then you are
Mm-hmm.
adding on their stack a new technology they need to learn. You need to
Mm-hmm.
explain to them why.
Mm-hmm.
How does this add into the story? How will it help them grow better? So there is that storytelling and selling part that's more important. I can just dump on that person, by the way. I can just say, hey, cloud security is a new issue. Go do this, cloud security certification, and then get certain things done for me. So it's combination of things. And the second thing I would say is have that rotation in terms of technical specialization. So that
Mm-hmm.
will motivate people more. A
Mm-hmm.
vulnerability management person would be super excited to pursue cloud security certification. Identity management person would be more interested to say, hey, I want to do something with incident response. So
Mm-hmm.
rotation also helps. Is when you rotate them from one specialty to another specialty, they would be more interested in pursuing that technical track and going on that journey, rather than just adding on the existing stack. So one is
Mm-hmm.
give them the broader picture as to what adding these new technical skills means to them, their career, and their long-term growth. And then second is rotate. Rotation does help. It goes long way actually, creating a very a healthy and sustainable cybersecurity team. Because what you've given them is ability to learn different aspects of cybersecurity, and then it also
Mm-hmm.
helps them become confident that hey, one day, now that I know identity management, now I know data protection, I know incident response. One day I could be the big boss. I can become, the CISO or the head of the function. That is equally important.
Mm-hmm. But what about these employees that, let's say, work in marketing and they're like, oh, why should I even care about cybersecurity? How do you go about saying that it's important that you know some of the technicalities?
Yeah, so the management philosophy is pretty quite same, I would say. Maybe every organization will different. It's two ways.
Mm-hmm.
Show them what good looks like,
Mm-hmm.
or show them dead bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So the choice is yours. What works in your organizations? In certain organizations, you show them a dead body, that makes a
Mm-hmm.
huge impact. They're like, I understand why this needs to be done, and sometimes what good looks like. So
Mm-hmm.
one example is you said marketing. You go to
Mm-hmm.
this person and say, hey, this is an example of how one mistake from your side can have cascading impact on health and hygiene of everyone in the institution. And that's a good way to do it. Or the second way is, hey, look at that marketing team. They are doing way better than us because they are able to give confidence to customers about security of our systems. So you can do it both ways. Show them a good benchmark as to why they are probably relatively poor in their hygiene compared to others.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can say, hey, here is an example of consequences of your actions and why you should do certain things. So it's really depends on the culture of the organizations, and depend
Mm-hmm.
on what kind of message that person is willing to receive.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, in some organizations, showing dead bodies is the most effective way. In some organizations, it's like, hey, this is how good looks like.
Yeah.
Would you please walk this, the extra mile with me?
Yeah. But I can imagine that the dead body example is quite effective for many teams.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Sandeep, what question would you like to ask to our next guest?
If they ever have to do this thing all over again, what would they do differently?
Very deep one.
If they have to go on a cybersecurity journey again, having gone through what they have gone through, or a
Mm-hmm.
technology thing, what would they different? I'll give an example. I was in KPMG, then I went to SecureWorks, then I worked at Risk
Mm-hmm.
IQ, which is a startup. Now I work in a bank, and I always wonder, how life would have been if I had just stayed in KPMG. I don't know. But
Hmm.
it's a good question to ask for the next speaker to reflect and say, okay, if I had an opportunity to redo the whole journey all over again, what would I do?
Hmm. Hmm. Where will I be in? Yeah, it's very hard to exactly say where you're gonna be. It is a good reflecting lesson.
I'm sure there'll be some wisdom in it.
Yeah,
That is exactly the reason that question is because
yeah.
that would allow you to reflect on steps that
Hmm.
you think you taken right and steps you don't think you didn't take right. It will allow us to probably from the next speaker learn what we should and shouldn't do as we go on this journey. And it's more for the, I would say the question is more for the next generation, because
Yeah.
then they will say, oh, okay, now I understand, these are the things I
Hmm.
shouldn't do.
Yeah. This is where the dead body counts. I probably shouldn't be moving in that direction or something like this. Yeah. Sandeep, I really enjoyed our conversation. I really appreciate you sharing your journey, and I got to know what kind of challenges you have to handle every day. I think from outside the perspective, you see the title, but very few times you really understand what that actually means and what kind of challenges you have to handle. And the new technology is constantly evolving. So I really appreciate learning and understanding what you've done and how you help people outside understand the risks behind the AI, cloud, and what can be done. And beyond all of this, also to learn about the threats that you think people underestimating and should pay close attention to. And I have to admit, my personal favorite is still around your leadership steps and skills that you advise other people to take. What are the things that they should be reflecting on? And so often, a lot of our personal career success depends on communication. While technology is important, the communication is probably the most key component when it comes to growing up. And I'm very excited to see how is it gonna affect whoever is gonna listen to this podcast and what lessons they're gonna draw from it. So thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you for the opportunity. Thanks to you, doing amazing job, by the way, and SquareX as well, giving platform to share lessons and almost like enable the community to learn from that shared experience and expertise. So very well done. Having this podcast and a platform for the voice to reach out to a lot of people. So thanks a lot for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.